evening and welcome to an all-new season of the Hamilton Report. Today is Monday, November the 1st, and I am so excited to be back with you. I missed you while we took some time off from this broadcast. So many things going on with the Oklahoma Democratic Party, but I'm so happy to be back in this space now with you every Monday evening at 6:30. We've moved the time to make it a little easier for people to tune in live, and that way you can interact with us through the comments and be more of a part of the broadcast than if you were watching it later on. There's so much that we have to discuss this season. Some really wonderful happenings and some things that we're very concerned about. And we'll be getting to all that in due time. But tonight we are going to begin our season with a very timely episode. And it's hard to think that it was a year and a half ago when we began this broadcast. And one of my very first guests then is our first guest for this season. And there's a reason why it's so timely. If you have been following the Julius Jones case at all, you know that it has been a horrific roller coaster for 22 years. Last week, the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals granted a stay of execution. The Supreme Court then overruled the 10th Circuit, and so Oklahoma had an execution last week. Soon, coming up on that calendar is Julius Jones. And I'm very excited about something that happened today for Julius and on his behalf. And there's no one that I would rather talk to about this than a man who has known Julius since they were children. They were best friends, are best friends. And Jimmy Lawson is a man who really has my heart for the way that he has stood up and advocated for Julius, who has truly spent so much energy and so much time and money and effort and just given so much of himself to this process. So it's my privilege to welcome back to the Hamilton Report, Jimmy Lawson. Jimmy, welcome, sir.
Mr. Hamilton, how are you?
I don't think you've ever called me that before. I don't know what you're talking about.
I feel like it was in order for the day.
Well, to see that smile, that's a very different smile than you had the last time we talked. And so I want you to explain to our audience what happened today on Julius's behalf.
Yeah, first and foremost, I want to say thank you to you, Scott, for allowing me to get back onto your amazing show. We kicked this off about a year and a half ago, and today kind of represents the culmination of the end game, if you were almost to the end game. So today, the Oklahoma Pardon and Parole Board voted 3-1 in favor of Mr. Julius Jones's clemency approval, which is an amazing feat. You know, taking into consideration the roller coaster ride that we have had the past 2 to 3 weeks, you know, today for me and the Jones family represents, you know, all of that work and culmination of the past 22 years of believing, right? Even when the people would say otherwise and the system would say otherwise, and we kept pressing and kept fighting. So today is one of those historical moments, not only for our community, but I think for the state of Oklahoma to say that, yes, we can. Yes, we can. And yes, we can. So, you know, getting Julius approved for clemency today and hearing Julius's voice for ourselves. He has not spoken 22 years. To hear him present his side of the story was an absolutely blessing.
Oh, it was. I watched a good chunk of that hearing, and listening to him speak, he was so measured, so thoughtful, just such a gentleman with the way that he laid everything out. And it was, my gosh, it was really, really wonderful to hear him speak in his own words. Now, I know for a long time he's had a lot of people speaking for him. Tell me, I have had the privilege of spending time with his mother on a few occasions. What was it like for her today?
You know, she's been very contained with her emotions over the past couple of months. She hasn't really said a whole lot, and she hasn't really got to the point where she was emotional. But today, after they voted for the 3-1, it was the first time I've seen her in a long time, you know, sit there, soak it in, And I said, let it go. Let it go. You know, I let mine go at the commutation, man. I was crying and screaming, let's go. And I was all over the place. So she was very contained at the commutation, but today was her moment to let it go, man. It was tears of joy. It was tears of relief. It was years of grinding. All that was a big pot of emotions that's just flowed out. I was so excited for her and Mr. Jones to finally have this moment. As you know, Scott, 22 years is not a short time. It's a long haul. And when you have an opportunity to cross over that mountaintop like we did today, it was just an amazing feeling watching Mrs. Jones just let it go.
When you said 22 years, if everyone who's watching tonight would just think back a moment where you were 22 years ago and how much of your life you have lived in that 22 years, whereas someone who is on death row that whole time, in a sense, a very real sense, their life just comes to a real stop, doesn't it, Jimmy?
It does. When you think about it, me and Julius joke all the time. My oldest daughter's 21, and he says, wow, I've never seen my niece. Of course, he calls my kids his nieces. I've never seen my niece in real life. I think like, wow, right? That's a whole lifetime, right? That's a whole lifetime. So when you put it in that perspective, you think about, you have a lot of young people who are 20, 21, 22 that are, getting shot and killed or dying or whatever the case may be. So you're talking about a whole lifetime in essence, right? So now we're crossing into this next lifetime for Mr. Jones. So I'm excited. He had this sense of, wow, man, I finally got over the hump. I talked to him this afternoon. He was super duper excited. I said, how'd you feel, man? He's like, it felt amazing to speak. Think about it, Scott. How cruel is it to take a human being and not allow them to speak for themselves? I mean, what type of system is that? And that's what Mr. Jones had to deal with.
And it's interesting that you say that, Jimmy, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I work in a business that's all about opinions. It's all about expressions of what you feel on a topic or about a candidate or an issue. And if all of a sudden that was taken away from me, or from any of us, that alone would be an extremely isolating situation where we all express ourselves in different ways, but to take our voice away, and as you said, that's what he's been dealing with. I'd like for you to talk a little bit, Jimmy, because I found this part particularly cruel and unusual in the process for anyone on death row. Beginning, 45 days out, they're put on death watch. Am I right with the timing? Is it 45 days?
Yeah,
when they start moving them?
It's 30 days out.
30 days out. So whatever time increment it is, but they're moved closer and closer and closer to the execution chamber. I cannot imagine every time that you're moved, that you're just one step closer to being murdered by the state. Can you talk a little bit about, I want to look at Julius's mindset throughout this, but particularly this last month. What's it been like for him, and how has he been able to maintain a sense of hope in all of this?
Yeah, sure. You brought up a good question, a great analogy about what that looks like. So 30 days out before they schedule you to hypothetically die, they'll shift you over to what they call death watch, which is the cell next to the death chamber that they plan to execute your life in. So you don't have a lot of belongings. You're in there with some pillows and blankets, maybe a couple of cards, whatever the case may be, but not your normal setup you have in your normal cell. So you're spending all day, right, next day and the next day sitting right next to the cell that they plan to execute you. And then on top of that, they want you to do that for 20 days and then expect you to come and speak on your own behalf with a clear mind, with a clear conscience, right, and perform well. In my opinion, that's cruel and inhumane, right? You can't set yourself up mentally to provide a great presentation if you're dealing with this horrific environment, looking at this chair every day that they plan to execute you in. And it was really weird because Julius and Mr. John Grant were really close in proximity with the cell. So he would say to me that I see John Grant quite often, and we've had some conversations. This was during the fiasco the week before the unfortunate execution of Mr. Grant, and they got to know each other. They had a relationship, and when you are a friend with somebody and they happen to lose their life, it affects you, right? So now you have one of your friends being executed, and then 4 days later, you have to be prepared to speak upon for yourself. I mean, they were just throwing all kind of curveballs at Mr. Jones to try to get him, in my opinion, off his mental game. But I will say this about my best friend: he's very, very smart and sharp. He has an amazing mentality and heart. So I knew that this would be his moment to push through that adversity, and perform like he did today.
And, we began talking about this as being a roller coaster, and it certainly has for you, your family, all of those folks who have been supportive of Julius for so many years. But honestly, there is not a way that I can imagine the emotional torment that anyone on death row has to go through, and especially if there is widespread doubt about your guilt or innocence. And so the fact that he was even able to open his mouth today is pretty astonishing. But to be able to be so lucid and so able to speak his heart, it was very, very moving to see.
And that pays tribute to who we have been trying to promote all these years of who the real Julius Jones is, right? The compassionate, the intelligent man, the man who has a vision. You heard him talk about what he plans on to do when he gets out. Some of the stuff that we have talked about the system over the past couple of years is kind of what kind of motivated me to run for Oklahoma City mayor, because there's some stuff in the system, right, that absolutely has to be changed. And Julius wants to play an amazing role in that. So he has an amazing vision. I'm excited about where he's going to be when he comes back into the free world, man. And I think he's going to be a huge asset, in this community.
Now, if I'm not overlooking the fact that you are an announced candidate for mayor of Oklahoma City, and I promise you we'll talk a lot more about that in another show. But tonight, I really want to lift you up as the advocate that you have been, because this is an example of where folks not deeply involved at the grassroots level, it never would have come to what it came to today. I mean, this took absolute dogged determination on your part, on the part of everyone who ever marched, whoever called the legislator or the governor, everyone who ever sent a letter. That's a tremendous groundswell of people, and I was really touched to see the diversity of people who were standing with Julius and praying for him. Clergy from around the country. A friend of mine called me last week from New York, and she said, I don't know if you know anything about this man, but his name is Julius Jones, and I'm worried to death about it. And she explained to me what she had read, and I felt such a sense of relief knowing that Julius's story was bigger than an Oklahoma story. It's one that resonated with well-thinking people, and so to know that every single person that's done anything played an important part in this process, that has got to be one of the greatest examples of grassroots advocacy that I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's been amazing blessing, and amazing ride. When we first started, there was nobody involved except myself and the Jones family. We were taking 1,000 no's along this lonely journey. But what kind of fueled me and fueled everybody else that eventually came on board was he looked just like a normal person, your next door neighbor, your son, your cousin, your brother, right? The guy who works at the store, works at the bank, right? Intelligent. He reminded you of all of these normal people that look like you and I, and then you resonate. The normal person would say, wait a minute. So how could this guy be, on death row? He just seems so intelligent. So it prides you to dive into the case. And then once you got into the case, you figured out, wait a minute. Yeah, something's really not right. So we were blessed and fortunate, man, to keep what I call my foot on the gas pedal, no matter what the no's were coming. I had an amazing father, so I have to get credit, God rest his soul, to the foundation he put into me about standing up for another brother, right? He looked at me when I was 21. He said, son, the greatest love is when you can lay your life down for a friend. I thought, wow. And I said, would Julius do that for me? And I said, yes. So I took a challenge upon myself to say, whatever that end result looks like, because that's the key for our community. I think our community sometimes looks at grassroots and fighting for people, but we're concerned about what the end result's going to look like, right? Because it could be negative, right? The end result could be a negative result. However, when you're truly in the fight for justice and in the fight with love, no matter what your income or your outcome may be, you have to give 110%. And that's what we did. So as we got along, man, God really blessed us with some amazing opportunities and amazing people. CC Jones Davis and some other people coming on board to help expand this movement. And then it just grew and grew and grew and grew. Kim Kardashian, Blake Griffin, Russell Westbrook, all these amazing. Now we got the Golden State Warriors on deck. And so, when people understand that could be them, case closed.
Yeah, that's such an important point, because none of us knows our futures, and we could all be at the wrong place at the wrong time. We could all be accused of something that we didn't do. We could all find ourselves in exactly the same position that Julius has found himself in. And I'm glad you brought that up, because to me, that nothing brings it home quite like that this could have been you or me or anyone in our family. And it's such an emotional high right now. But I need you to talk, please, about what next steps are. And this is there wasn't a lot of talk about this today, because everyone was really riding high on that positive emotion and the outcome from the hearing. But what happens now?
Yeah, so again, like you said, we celebrated today, but we go back to work tomorrow. So once we receive clemency, as we did today, it goes before Governor Stitt for his approval or denial. However, the trick of the trade is that he has a pending execution date of November the 18th. So Governor Stitt has to take action before that November 18th in order to stop that execution. That is the most pressing issue right now, is getting the public and the supporters to understand that we've got one more hurdle to jump over. So yes, we celebrate today, but we have an amazing amount of work to do in the next 15 days. So our hopes and prayers is that Governor Stitt will concede with the approval of the Pardon and Parole Board to sign Julius Jones's clemency. So that's where we are. We've got this last step. Thank God that the PPB voted for his approval, but we've got one more signature to get from Governor Stitt.
And that was a 3-1 vote today in Joyce's favor.
That's correct. So we were minus one board member because he recused himself. Mr. Scott Williams is the reason why it was 3-1 instead of a total of 5 individuals voting.
Pardon me. I'd like for you to. I'm going to shift the gears a little bit, because I'd like for you to talk about the incongruency. You and I share a common faith, and Oklahoma is known for its number of churches and the people who say that they're affiliated with a church. How do you think people reconcile their beliefs, their spiritual religious beliefs, and at the same time can support state execution?
That's a
disconnect.
That's a $1 million question. You've got a lot of folks who are in this state that consider themselves to be pro-life, but yet they are for the death penalty, right? That's kind of an oxymoron. So it's interesting to see that dynamic when it comes to our criminal justice system. In my personal opinion, I think it deals with relatability and what I call palpability. A lot of the folks who may be on this seesaw with pro-life, death penalty, has never experienced somebody personally that has had a adverse experience with the system, right? So they don't know what it means to be wrongfully convicted. They don't know what it means to be biased against or what's the right word I'm looking for? Racially profiled in a system. So it doesn't exist for this bubble, if you will. So because it doesn't exist to them, they have a hard time of making, well, if you did the crime, then it's an eye for an eye and we should put you to death. But, you and I understand that there's so many components behind this system that makes it unequitable, right? Just the way the system is set up. So I'm intrigued, as you are, of how many folks will say they're pro-life, but yet they're for the death penalty. I think, Scott, the biggest factor that the Julius Jones case, what in my opinion has done for Oklahoma and Oklahoma City, is that it presented a individual that didn't meet the mold. And what do I mean by that? Julius Jones doesn't meet the thug, the gangbanger, one who can't communicate, it's not smart, right? He's everything opposite of that, right? He's the good kid, both parent homes, 3.9 GPA, academic scholarship of OU, very smart, very intelligent. So now people's like, wait a minute, because now it's a little relatable because he's just like you and I. I think this may be a door opener, for folks to rethink about what you just talked about.
Pardon me. I certainly hope so, Jimmy, because this is a much greater issue than one man's life. I mean, that's where our focus is today.
Yeah.
But it would be, to me, it would be a horror if we go through this. Julius comes home, but the system remains the same. The minute he gets the approval that he's coming home, I think that's when we have to start having very, very serious, open, honest discussions in our families, in our communities, in our churches, wherever we are, about how long are we going to allow this barbaric thing that we call the death penalty to exist in our state.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. As soon as that takes place, that's when we got to jump on that bandwagon and raise our flags to make noise about these law changes, right? These changes that really take effect and affect you and I on a local level. Because you're right. Unfortunately, Julius Jones is not the only person, right? He's not the only wrongfully convicted individual. He's not the only wrongfully convicted person on death row. So we have a systematic problem, as you said, Scott, that starts with how do we change these laws to change this paradigm?
And frankly, the only way to do that is by changing the people we send to public office.
Bingo.
That's it. That's where the change can happen. That's where it must happen. Let me ask you to just give us a rundown over what happens in terms of time frame from now till the 18th.
Sure. So the official close of business happens tonight or tomorrow morning for the PPB. They'll submit that and approve those official paperwork tomorrow morning. Then they'll send over to Governor Stitt. There's a timing delay between that. I want to say maybe 3 or 4 days. Once the paperwork for the clemency approval hits Governor Stitt's desk. So now that timeline is scrunched down a little bit, right? So now we've got until maybe 4 days from now until the 18th for Mr. Governor Stitt to make a decision. So in my opinion, I think that may be about a 10-day window now once he's got that paper and he's ready to go. So it's very, very crucial that the public in watching this broadcast understand that. Call Governor Stitt's office, email them, flood them, keep that pressure on them that, yes, we need him to take action. And we need him to do that right now.
And we will tomorrow, we will put on to the Oklahoma Democratic Party website the address and phone number for the governor for anyone who can take a few minutes to reach out and call him on Julius's behalf.
Awesome.
Once, if the governor commutes the sentence, so that would take it from life to, I mean, that would take it from death to life with the possibility of parole. He's already served 22 years, right?
Right.
So what happens?
So if that approval, once he signs and approves that commutation to a life with the possibility of parole, then our next step will be to sign and submit a parole petition with the Pardon and Parole Board. Once that takes place, they'll put his petition on their docket, and then he'll have a parole hearing. And then we'll do it one more time. We'll go before the PPB. He'll make his case of why he has served his time and he needs to come home. So once that takes place, they'll take a vote again at the parole hearing. And if they vote in favor, then they'll set his release date. He'll be coming home.
Man, well, I'm just so happy to see that there is light at the end of this tunnel, and right now it looks so good in Joyce's favor. We're going to be out of time here in a minute, Jimmy. But is there anything you'd like to share with our audience about what you would like for people to be doing right now, other than continuing to pray for the family?
Yeah, I always take this opportunity to thank the public for all of their support, all of their prayers, all the emails, all their calls. It takes a whole community to do what we're doing. So we don't take it for granted. We're highly grateful and thankful for each one of you all out there that has jumped on this Justice for Julius train, and continue to do what you've been doing. Continue to keep praying, continue to keep writing, continue to keep calling, and hopefully a few days from now, we'll have justice served.
Yes, indeed. Well, Jimmy, my friend, our time is up, and I know that you have done 1,000 interviews today, and you're not done yet. You're booked through the rest of the evening. So the fact that you took some time out to spend with us this evening means an awful lot to me personally, and I know it does to our viewers, because you have helped all of us be a little better informed, and I hope for anyone that was sitting on the sidelines that they will become a little more empathetic to the plight of Julius and so many others who are in the same position that he's been in for a very long time. You have my undying devotion for all that you are. You're a terrific man, a great friend, and so just know that all of us who have supported Julius recognize your leadership, and I'm so appreciative to you for all that you've done for Julius on his behalf, but also in bringing the community together. You've done a great job, and I know that that's just for you right now. This is just a moment in time, but I can assure you that the work that you've done and are doing will have a positive impact for generations to come. So thank you, Jim.
I appreciate it, Scott. It's always a pleasure and an honor. And thank you for your time.
Now, next time you come on, we're going to talk about Jimmy Lawson for mayor of Oklahoma City. How's that?
Sounds great. Look forward to it.
All right. Thank you, my friend. Have a good evening, and I'll see you soon.
You too. Thank you, sir.
Wow. I feel so very positive right now about Julius Jones and where he is. And again, please reach out, call the governor's office, send a letter, send a postcard, because if we are silent, he's going to think that no one is paying attention and no one really cares. And so I encourage you to do just that, to send those letters, to send the calls, because it's not too late for you to make a difference too. My friends, we are out of time, but it has been so good to be back in this seat with you. This is my happy place. My happiest hour of the week is when you and I get to spend some time together. I hope that you will share this broadcast on social media. Share it with your friends, because this is an important message that we really need to spend some time thinking about and talking about. So please do share it. And if you have ideas for guests or topics that you would like to see presented on this broadcast, please email Scott at okdemocrats.org. Until we're together next Monday evening, I hope that you have a wonderful week. I trust that you're enjoying this nice, cool fall weather, and take great care of yourself. And I'll see you back here next Monday evening at 6:30. From all of us here at the Oklahoma Democratic Party and the Hamilton Report, I'm Scott J. Hamilton, thanking you for being with us. Good night.